Good morning or good evening, all, and welcome to the Data Driven Community Virtual Meeting. A few words about the Data Driven Community. If you check the community website, then you can notice we are managing two branches of activities. Scroll down the page a bit and to see the upcoming events. On the left side of the page, you can notice the Future Data Driven Summit, an annual joint conference we are leading and running with multiple data platform user groups and partners. So the second branch of the activity are weekly meetings of the cloud data driven user group like today. You are more than welcome to contact any of the community board. Jean Joseph is the founder and co-administrator. Rodan is the second co-admin. Anna Weitz is the third moderator. My name is Deepti Kokuri, and I'm a database administrator and a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I'm the third co-admin of the data-driven community, and I will be hosting the session today. Together, we are here to help and serve the data platform community. So during the meeting today, please feel free to use the chat for any questions and discussions as well. You're also more than welcome to use the reactions. It doesn't interfere with the course of the meeting. If you hear something you love, like, or you want to clap hands, then feel free to do so. And I would like to welcome today. Today, we are very honored to have Anil Mahadev with us. He's a principal multi-cloud solution architect working at Idera Incline. Anil, we are so glad and honored to have you here. Please go ahead and share your screen and you can start presenting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deepthi. I'm super honored uh, and glad to be here. So I just want to get a quick show of hands if you're able to see my presentation here, please.
Yes, we were able to.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Depending upon what time zone you're joining us today. Uh, my name is Anil Mahadev. I'm a senior solutions architect and multi-cloud architect at Idera Inc. We're a leader in the multi-database platform tools business. And today we'll be speaking about how to get started with auto failover groups in Azure SQL. This has been a topic of my favorite topic for quite a long time. And I just want to put some coordinates here that you can feel free to send me an email or you can connect with me on LinkedIn after the session. So our agenda for today is going to be more hands-on than just slides. I just want to give you a first an agenda on what we're about to be covering. And then we can, and this is your session, so please feel free to ask any questions. I just cannot answer them right away, but I will get to the answers as soon as I'm able. The first and foremost is I'll go ahead and turn off the camera here for just for this so that we can focus on that. The introduction to auto failover groups and how do failover groups work? How do you set them up? And finally, some best practices to set up auto failover groups. Now, for those of you who've been working with Azure SQL for a long time, the concept of failover groups was introduced in terms of taking the concept of geo-replication to the next level. It helps you to do it at the server level. And here you have the ability, for example, with both Azure SQL database and managed instance to provide high availability and disaster recovery. That's the main focus. So how do they work? It's primarily when you have your primary database that is available and you need to have a DR site to be leveraged, how you can have it to automatically switch over from the primary database to from one region to the secondary database in the different region. So that's one of the primary ways of how it works. This is the architecture overall on how failover groups work. One of the first areas that you need to look into is when you're looking at two logical SQL servers, both primary and secondary, you deploy your databases on those servers. Now, one of the first things that you will see here is that the end user is immune to looking at how the actual failover happens, so it's transparent to the user. You do have a group of users that you want to also let them know that if they are trying to access it, you can have either give them the connection string for, let's say, finance department or HR department that needs to just read some data, so that you can go ahead and give them the read-only listener. And if you want your application developers to go ahead and update the application, you can give them the read-write listener URL. We will be covering this in a more practical example. I will be walking you through step by step on how to set this up. So it's going to be pretty exciting. So on the left-hand side, you have a primary region. So let's say it'll be central US. On the secondary region, we'll take it as Mexico City or any other region across the world. It doesn't have to be, as long as it's not in the same region, you have to keep that in mind. So next is the primary thing on how the primary database or the main server where your application read-write workloads run on. And on the secondary one, it's primarily used for read-only workloads that will help traffic distribution.
Anil?
Yes, please.
Please notice that you are showing half of the slide. It's between two slides.
Here, how about this?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you. So the next part of it is when we're going to be looking at how to set things up. So I will be covering the different types. So now if I go to the types of failover and what's available, you can look at automatic failover, like in the event of a catastrophe or a data center outage, the system will automatically switch to the secondary server, thereby ensuring minimal disruption for your application. Next is the synchronization. Data is continuously synchronized from your primary site to the secondary site. And here you can look at have it either synchronous or asynchronous, depending upon the configuration and requirements. Then you have read-only routing. So where you have, like I'd explained before, you have the ability to have this for any kind of reporting purposes or read-only while the application, while the database comes back on from the failover. In more detail, this is highly customizable in terms of failover policies. What is the grace period you want before the failover, and whether or not to fail back to the primary once it's back on. Like I mentioned, all applications are transparent to this process. So connected to the database do not need to change their connection string. Azure manages the redirection of the connections. And we'll be using the failover group read-write listener to take care of that. And we can choose which one we want to be active. So thereby your application code changes are very minimal. We will next talk about some of the use cases. So one of the primary use cases, of course, disaster recovery. You want to protect against regional outages from one region to another, thereby enabling automatic failover, right? And then you also have high availability. It handles the failover without any kind of manual intervention. We have something called customer managed and Microsoft managed. I know I'll talk a little bit about that as we're preparing the demo. Next, we have the awesome feature of the global load distribution that allows you to distribute those read-only workloads across global regions. I just want to get a quick show of hands to see if everybody's following through before we start the demo, and if I'm going too fast or is the speed okay. I just need a show of hands. Okay, good. Thank you. So now let's go ahead and explore the fun part of setting up an auto failover group. So one of the things is I have a backup set up that in case if the live demo if the demo gods do not have us in our favor, but let's be optimistic and let's go ahead. The first thing you'll do is you need to have an Azure subscription, obviously. And here you can see I'm going to go ahead and navigate first and create a resource group. And here I'll give it as Cloud Data Summit Demo. And here I can pick which region I would like it to be. So let's say I go and pick it in Central US. And here I'm next going to go and give some tags. And I'll just always create tags so that they'll be easy to locate. So here I've gone ahead and done that. Now I'm going to go ahead and create my resource group. Now that the resource group has been created, I'll go to the resource group here. And what I can do now is I would need to go ahead and create my resources involved. So what I'll do is I can do one of two things. Either I can click on create, or I can go to the global search here and type for Azure SQL database. But what I would like to do first is I would like to go ahead and create my logical servers. So here I'll just go ahead and say SQL database. Or actually, I'll just get a SQL server. And go there. And now what I can do is I can create my database server under SQL databases. I'm going to create two of them in different regions. So if you run out of capacity, you will just see that you will not have access, but we'll be changing this. So we have our resource group. Here we are going to type in. So here I'm just going to go give it a CDS primary. Region. There we go. And now I'm going to pick the location. So I'll go to Central US. There we go. And here I can choose which I want, Entra or both. I'll just pick both. And here I'll just choose my username that I want for my Entra ID. Enter your SQL admin username and password. Next, I'll give as yes, I would like to enable Azure to access these resources. We'll leave all the other settings as they are, but let's go ahead and add our tags now. Okay, here we go. So now I'll go ahead, review and create. So now I've got this as my primary one. I'm just going to copy this so that I can deploy my second one. So while this is getting deployed, I'll go ahead and initiate another one. So if it's going to go ahead and start creating, we'll just give it just a moment. Don't know if it's just me or are you folks also not able to see the creation process? Let's see, go ahead and open this one here, and I'll log in to the portal. And I will go ahead and click on database server. And this time I will give it a secondary region. And I'll choose a different region. So let's say I'll give it a Germany West. Okay. And here I'll choose both. And I'll go ahead and choose my Entra ID here. Provide a username and password. Yes. Again, go back here. Add the tags. Review and create. It's initializing the deployment. So good. So it's gone ahead and initialize the deployment here. So while it's doing that, let's go into our resource groups. And here, let's go into the demo section of the resource group. And what I'll do here is, here you can see I have my primary region being set up, right? So under this, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and navigate to the SQL databases. Right now, I don't have any. So what I'll do is I'll go into SQL databases here. And I will go ahead and say create. And this time I'll just give it as the primary region. It's selected based on my resource group. I'll just give it as Anil ADW as my database name. And we'll just leave all of this as the default. We'll choose Geo if you want your backups to be there. This is just a demonstration. I'll be deleting all of this after the workshop. So it's all good. I don't need a backup. I can choose between elastic pools or development and workload depending upon which one fits your budget. So I can choose one of them. If I want a development, I can then choose this. So now I get a much more lower bill. So you can go and choose that. And we'll go ahead and add my client IP address for this. You do have an option to add this as a endpoint. This is just for the demo purposes. I'm doing this. Again, I'll be deleting this after the workshop. Next, we can go to additional settings. I'm just going to go ahead and use the AdventureWorks LT database for simplicity. And here again, we'll go ahead and use the tags. Review and create. We're just going to wait for this to finish. And then I'll use SSMS to get the connection string and connect to this. Now, the very first time you log in, you are prompted, depending upon MFA, you are prompted to enter your, if you have, the Authenticator app or any kind of push notification, you just will have to authenticate through that. And once that is done, then it'll not ask you again. As long as you don't reboot your machine, you should be just fine. So as we're going ahead and working with this, let me just go ahead and look at our resource group here. And I'll go back to the Cloud Summit demo. Here, I'll just go into the primary region. And now if I see, I do have the database, right? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and before I set up Failover Groups, I'm first going to go ahead and get the server information and make sure that I'm able to connect, okay? So what I have here is I have a connection already from one of my other sample demos, but we'll be focusing on this here now. So now I'm just going to use this and go ahead and connect. So it's just going to ask me for my client IP address. This only happens the first time. Let me see here. Oh, this is a different one. Let me change the thing. I need to change the user. Sorry. Let's go in here. There you go. Perfect. So these kind of things will happen if you see, and then we should be able to look at all of that. So now we can choose whichever subscription we have. So I'll just pick one of these. Hit OK. And voila, there you go. So now here you can see that I have the ADW database, have the tables, all that good stuff. Okay. So first and foremost, we're good on this part. Now, what we need to do is we need to actually go ahead and actually set up the failover groups. So how do you get here? You first go to your primary server, then you go on the left-hand side, and under data management, you click on failover groups. Or what you can do is you can just type in failover groups, and it'll pop up here. Okay. The very first thing you'll do is you'll click on add group, and this is where you can give it a name. So here I'll just give it as CDS failover group 1. So I'll choose the secondary region for my failover. So I have to pick that. And here I can choose, I'll show you what happens when I pick primary. It says you cannot use the same server as the partner. So you need to choose a different one. So that'll also give you an indication, like in case if you stumble, you'll know what to do. So now here I have the option to click on configure a database. Once this, there you go. And all you need to do is just highlight the database name and just look at the cost of how much it's going to be, and you'll hit select. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Now, while this is happening, one of the other options is if you do get like there's no more capacity, I would highly recommend you reach out to Azure support and have them increase the capacity for the region so that you can go ahead and create those resources. So now it's actually going to go ahead and create our failover group. And once we have this, we will then be utilizing the read-write listener for this. And once that is done, we will go ahead and insert a sample table with some sample data and identify which is the primary node. And then once we do the switchover, we'll then see which node it has and make sure that the table exists in the secondary node as well. So just want to get a feel. Everybody learning something new here? Okay, so we'll just wait for this. And once we have the failover group here, we'll go ahead and proceed. So this usually takes some time, but since we're having this as an interactive session, we have this. In the meantime, while this is getting done, let me just look at the questions that I have received in the chat, and let me see if I can answer any.
I don't see any questions. Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of thumbs ups.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deepti. All right, let's see. And again, this depends on which region you are and how busy that region is and everything. It just takes a little bit of time. And there you go. So everything's good. Now, all I got to do is just click on go to resource. Now here you'll see a couple of things. So right now we have read-only endpoint. That thing, the policy is disabled, but right now it tells you the replication role, the replication state is still playing catch up. So once it says everything is good, then we should be able to take a look at this. So it's still playing catch up. And once it's done, you'll see a globe with everything. So now if I hit refresh, it's still trying to play catch up by transferring that to the other region. While it's doing that, let me show you an existing one that I already have built for this. So here you can see I have my CDS failover server, as well as my primary server here. So what I can do here is in the failover server, I can actually click on the primary one, excuse me, and I can click on failover groups. Here you can see I have my primary server, my secondary server, and this is my customer managed failover policy. And we have about one database that's been set up here. So once it finishes playing catch up, you will see a globe with all of this, depending on which region you have done. Ours is here, it's showing Central US and Mexico Central. And you have your read-write listener and your read-only listener. So we have all of those. And what are the databases within that group? Here, I've created a database called CDS Summit. And here I have any database that are eligible to be added, that will be here. And if any one that are selected to be for removal, you can see that. Now let's go back to our resource group again, and let's go back to the the server. Let's come back here, and I'm going to go to the primary region, and I'm going to go to failover groups, and voila! See now? So all across, it's gone ahead and have it here. So from Central US all the way to Germany Central. I'm just going to maximize this so that you folks can see. Here we have this, and it's all the way up here. Now what I'll do is I'm actually going to go ahead, and I showed you in the previous screen, these are our primary read-write listeners and read-only. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this first. I'm going to go to SSMS. And this time, I'm just going to go ahead and give the failover a group name, okay, for read-write. And once I go and give it to the failover group, here you can now see I have the database. All the tables are intact. Now what I'll do is I'll take this script that I have here, and I will share all of these in my GitHub repository, so you folks can also simulate the same. So now I'll just go ahead and right-click on this and say New Query. And once I've done with it, let's make sure we don't have an airlines table here. Yeah, so there we go. It's done. And now if I refresh this, I should see an airlines table. There we are. Excellent. So now let me go ahead and select all the rows and make sure we have data. Excellent. Now's the time to do the failover. So a couple of things. There's something that says edit configuration. This is a failover policy that Microsoft gives you in order to have control. So you can have when you would like to do your DR tests and make sure. But if you give it to Microsoft, this is when Microsoft will decide all the read-write grace periods and everything, right? And when it is there. So I prefer customer managed because I have control over it. And that's the only configuration I wanted to show you. Now, there's a difference between failover and forced failover. So if I do failover, it switches to all the secondary, everything is rerouted, all this is good, right? But with a forced one, this may cause operational data loss if some transactions are in the process. So just be careful about that. So now observe in this map, as I move it and do a failover, it's now going to kickstart the initialization. So what is going to be a bold check mark from Central US is now going to be gone to Germany. So here you can see it says failover in progress. So right now it's actually doing that. And there you go. Awesome. Now, let me go back to SSMS. And all I'm going to do is, as if I'm working with the application, see, you'll get this, that you need to add this, a client IP address. So what I need to do is just come back into my secondary server. The reason I'm doing this is I want to show you what you might encounter and how you need to resolve it. Yeah, so that's the whole idea. Because if I showed you everything is going to work, then there's no point in having this session. So the secondary region, you go here, and under that, you should see the databases. So let me just minimize this. Go to the databases. Here we go. And here, I go to set the firewall rules. I can just make sure that I have the IP address set up. Now let's go back to SSMS. I click, select star from. Awesome. Now, how do we know which one is which server? So we just do this as node name. So right now it should return the Germany server, right? So it gives me the secondary region. So good. So now it's deployed and everything's good. Now let's do another failover. So if I go to either secondary region or anywhere, the cool thing is that if you go to the secondary region server, look at failover, it is still here. So now I'm coming here and I'm going to do a failover here. So now it's going to go back into the primary region here shortly. And one of the use cases that I find is that, especially when you're early in the process of application and development, you can leverage this to your advantage and perform and not having to worry about high availability. Let the database server handle all that load. But yes, with some of your connection strings and everything, there's plenty of documentation available. And I'll cover some of the best practices here. So now it's come back to the primary region. We're now back in action. So let me go back here. And this time I'll just execute that. I should get primary region here. There you go. So once let me just do this. There you go. So you can see that it's primary region here. So that was a quick demonstration on how you can set up your failover groups and everything. Next, let's move on to some of the best practices. Here, I've given you a link, and I'm going to actually see if I can copy this for you. And if I put it in here, I should go to the chat. There you go. All right, so now let me go back to the slides. So here you can see that these are some of the best practices for failover groups. And one of the key things is how you can actually programmatically do this. You can actually go ahead and look at how you can manage this or the failover groups using Azure CLI, PowerShell, REST APIs, etc. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you is that, let's say if I wanted to go to the read-only listener node, right? I want to copy this, and I want to go back to SSMS. And here, if I go to the read-only one, you see here, see, it's not going to allow you to connect because it's part of the failover, or unless I've, see here. Yeah, it was a password. I fat-fingered it, sorry. So here you can see, if I go to the secondary one, and if I come back here, and I'm just going to rename this to Airlines 2, okay? I'm just going to create a brand new query. See that? I get the error. Failed to update. I just wanted to show you this so that, nothing magical is happening. It's just, I just wanted to see this. See, it says you do not have access. Would you like to use not this one? If I go and expand this one here. So now if I even try to right click on the airline table and just say edit, I still will not be able to make any changes. It may display it, but it may not, you may not be able to make any changes. See, but you cannot make any changes. See, I'm actually trying to type some values, but it's not allowing me. So there you have it, folks. Very easy to deploy and manage. And last but not least, I come back to my presentation here. Whoops, where'd it go? Ah, yes, I clicked on the other one. Give me 1 second. Sorry. There you go. All right. So now I just would like to thank you all for attending today's session, and you're free to reach out to me on here. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen for just a second so that I can paste in some resources here that you can feel free to reach out. So, and of course, I'm going to paste the link to the all my demos. So today's demo is available at that GitHub page, please. And yeah, I'm open to any questions at this time. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to attend the session. The folks here at the Cloud Data Driven User Group are a great bunch of people. So I thank the organizers for having me here today. Really a pleasure. And I look forward to being on the next one.
Thank you so much, Anil. That's a great one, especially like how to create the always on availability groups between the two Azure SQL databases. And I have a question. So why do we need those tags? Like, what is the purpose of tags?
Sure. The purpose of the tags is just so that as you're organizing resources within Azure, you do have sometimes you get overwhelmed with the number of resources you create. So as a best practice, we always like to tag our resources, and that's where I try to use those.
Awesome. And I think BP have a question. You can
Please.
unmute yourself. Oh, he has the question here. How do you compare that with the AG failover on SQL Server? Yeah.
VM. So each one has their own purpose here. You are managing, everything is managed by Microsoft. And the AG failover on SQL Server, the availability groups, I think that requires you to actually set them up. But here, everything is done by Microsoft, so you don't have to do it. And right now, there's also a managed option where if you click on a SQL Server in Azure VM, BB, you can actually see that there's a high availability checkbox. So that in turn will go ahead and create all of that for you. So that's the main primary difference. If you look at it from an on-prem setup, or even if you have to do it in Azure, you still have to set up all those things manually for SQL Server. But for the PaaS solution, the SQL database, they help you to do that with just a few clicks. As you saw, it was pretty easy. I hope I answered your question, please.
Do we have any limit on how many secondary databases we can add read-only?
It depends. I have not added more than 10, but there should be. I'll have to check on that, but I have never even thought about that, to be honest with you. So I've usually secondary databases for read-only. I think you can just have, let me see. me see if I look at this. Let me check my notes here real quick. I think up to 5 is what
Up to
is
5.
allowed.
Okay.
Up to 5 is what is allowed.
Okay.
Yes.
And and the like it will come under the, so when we buy Azure, right? Azure SQL database, when we purchase,
Yes.
will the cost will be um defined based upon how many, like if we add more secondaries, do we have to pay for those, or is it for
Yes.
free up to 5?
But up to 5. No, you still have to pay for it. As I had shown you in the example,
Mhm.
it does charge you like $5.74, depending upon the Azure SQL database queue, right? So
Mhm.
that's where I believe is the charge. Since you can have only up to 5, that you can then calculate those. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone have any more questions? And one more question, Anil, like if
Uh,
anybody, since we have this environment here too, and we have a couple of more minutes, so I wanted to ask you as many questions as possible.
please,
So I see
please go
like,
ahead.
yeah,
Uh,
so we like if anybody is looking to learn Azure, Azure SQL
yes.
or like basics of Azure, like do you have
Uh-huh.
any recommendations on like where they can get started and what resources they can use? Either video, because I'm a visualized person, I
Yes,
like
yes, yes.
watching videos instead of reading through Microsoft Learn. Do you have any resources, known
Yes.
resources?
Absolutely, and I cannot recommend this enough. There's this thing that Bob Ward and Anna Hoffman started way back in 2020, and it's called the Azure SQL playlist. It's really helpful. I'm actually going to share that with the community right now. So give me
Awesome.
1 second, please. Let me just
Yeah.
give that to you. And it's basically a set of playlists. So here, I'm actually going to give you here. So let me go to the entire playlist. I'm just going to go to YouTube real quick and I'm going to give you the playlist here. So fundamentals, there we go. And yeah, here we go. I'm just going to paste this link here. It has the link and resources to everything. So there we go. So you can follow along. There's about 60 episodes. Really helpful. It helped me learn Azure SQL really nice. I'm like you too, Aditi. I'm a visual learner. Unless I can actually do it myself by looking at it, it's just yeah. So I think these would be a great resource. And of course, there's also one other area that I would highly recommend is where you can actually look at the following, uh, the Microsoft Learn option also, where you have all of this. In fact, there's actually a complete show with the links here as well. So there you go. And of course, I try to look at other YouTube resources. I try to follow the documentation. Uh, it depends on your use case. But if you want to get like a consistent learning experience, then I highly recommend the Introduction to Azure SQL for Beginners.
Awesome. That's great. And since you work for IDERA, do you
Mhm.
have any resources? Like I know, like there are a couple of articles that people will volunteer to write on IDERA platform. Do you have anything like a video, um, video recordings available from IDERA?
No, we do have a resource center at
Mm-hmm.
idera.com, and I can share the link for you. And here we have, but of course, IDERA, we're a huge organization, so it depends on what product you want.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Here you can go to the resource center, and if anybody is interested in learning about data modeling or working with data modeling with SQL Server, they can go and check out our ER Studio section where we have a bunch of resource center here too. So yeah, it's pretty in depth and a lot of resources here. But since this is a user group, I try not to promote any company stuff. But I just want to make sure that people have access to the information. So
Awesome, awesome. Because like we would like to provide as much as information as possible related to
yes,
this session. And
absolutely.
also, if anybody don't know about John Seville, he works for Microsoft. He's a principal architect. When I know about him, he was a principal architect for Microsoft, and he do several videos on Azure, starting from AZ 900 all the way until expert level, and they almost every day he posts about like Azure updates as well. If you are new to Azure and you wanted to kick it off from the scratch, like core basics, if you want to learn, go ahead and search for John Saville on YouTube. And
Yep.
just by looking at his videos and by following his playlist, people have become they have actually took a lot of expert level trainings. Like expert, all the trainings are for free and ad free as well. And also like they do certifications, and they also several people, when I read comments on his videos, many people even said that they got architecture jobs, like Azure architect jobs. It's so wonderful to read those sort of posts. So if you do not know about this resource, John Seville is a wonderful person. Along with the resources Anil shared, I think you can go ahead and look into it as well.
Yeah, great question. In terms of database backups, everything is being handled by Microsoft since this is a PaaS service. But otherwise, I would usually look at backups from the Azure portal itself for the databases. So here, for example, you wanted to do a lot of these things. So here you can look at, let me give you some information. They're actually being taken care for you. Again, like I said, this is a PaaS service, so most of the patching or any kind of updates is usually taken care. So, but let me just check my notes here real quick, and I'll get back to you on that.
Right. Thank you, Anil. Just one additional thing as the mic is enabled. Thank you, Ronan and the party for the session. And thank you also, Anil, for the presentation. A little bit related to that one. I think in kind of a regular scenario, in AG, when you select the backup option, you have 50% from the primary, or you can do the backup from the secondary. In Azure, I know the Azure SQL DB, there is that automatic backup by Microsoft.
Yes.
But if you plan to do your own backups, I know in managed instance, some of the, I don't know, metadata or some information will be lost if the secondary is primary, and if you want to do any backups or some kind of information in that regard. So just want to confirm if you have really tested that one, if you came across an issue with those kind of, manual or personal kind of backup plans in that regard for Azure SQL DB.
I have not deployed any of those because most of the time I just set it and forget it. I let the PaaS service take care of it. But I do agree, if you're working with some of those databases, having it backed up to a storage account would be probably the way to go. Is what I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't personally done it, like I said, but since it's the PaaS service, most of the time I just go ahead and take care of that. But there is a section on the server, right? You do have a section on the server where you can actually go ahead and have those backups. And let me share my screen real quick, if I may, please, and I can show
Yeah,
you that,
sure. Please go
please.
ahead.
So here's the thing. So if you go to the main server, okay, I'm talking about the main server, and then if you scroll down, you under data management, you have backups, okay? So this is where you can actually go ahead and choose which was the active one, and you can click on restore. See that?
Yes.
So now you can click on restore, and then you can choose which one you want to a point in time or a long-term backup retention. There you go. I hope this answered your question.
Exactly. But one quick info is that, I think for managed instance, when I tested it, looks like if the primary is the new secondary or whatever, and if there is like a backup from the current secondary, I think there might be a mismatch of information or something, things like that,
You mean
I
in
don't know,
terms
but
of the LSN and all that stuff?
I believe so. Because
Okay.
when the primary is the current primary and take a backup, and when the
Yeah.
secondary becomes the primary, and the
Mhm.
backup is again new from the current secondary, I think there would be some gaps, but I cannot say for sure because I haven't tested that one. But I read some in managed instance and want to confirm in this, the SQL database side, just want to confirm.
Right. See,
Otherwise,
and
at
if
least,
you
yeah,
yeah.
it helps to do further testing as well. Yeah.
Yes, and if you remember during the setup, remember I didn't choose geo zone redundant backup storage. I chose locally
Mhm.
only. So that's where, if you look at this, it can impact that, which might impact your data residency requirements. So which means that if your organization is in, let's say, Germany, and they have some very strict data retention policies, or the data shouldn't go out of Germany, that kind of thing, right? But here, if you look at zones, you can check out the different one and go from that. I just chose this local one since I will not be saving any of this information after this session today. That's why I decided to choose that. That was the only reason. Yeah, but this is where you would actually come in and go and do the restores. So
Good. Okay. I appreciate. Just in case if there is no any other question, just wanna add
yeah.
one more party or Anil, just for learning purpose as well. I don't know. Maybe it could be directly to you or anybody in this session as well. When you create the database in that firewall, we usually add our client IP address, if I'm not mistaken, so that
Yes,
we could avoid
correct.
that connection error. But like technically speaking, I think they said we can even put a public access, but security wise not somehow recommended. But in the company wise, we don't usually allow that part as well. So what is the best approach in that regard? Or I think there would be a kind of a creation of, what do you call, I don't know, like there is a network part that we need to configure, but a little bit
Yeah.
related, a little bit different, but just any kind of forethought
So
and
yeah,
discussion and learn. Yeah.
absolutely. So here is one of the best places I would say is networking. If you go under the networking region of your server, this is where I usually use, right? You want to create a private endpoint between your your application and your database, right? So
Mhm.
that's where I would go ahead and utilize it. In terms of learning more, I would use private access for all of this. And once you go to connectivity, you can then choose how you want the connections to be happening for any one of this. So, but did I answer your question, please?
Yes,
On
I think that does, yeah. But like
perfect.
to avoid any issue, anything from the company side can connect to our resources, rather than,
Yes,
have some
correct.
specific client IP address. Yeah.
Yeah, so the method I would highly recommend is to use a private endpoint, and that's where I would do it. Like, for example, whenever I decide I wanted to have something that does not need to be exposed to the internet, I use Bastion, right? From my VM, I use that and connect to the private access endpoint, all within Azure. So I'm not leaving that realm, that security realm, right? So
Mhm.
that's where I would recommend you can utilize that as one of your best practices.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry. So cool.
Final note, I think, I don't know if it is on my side. When I clicked your link about your GitHub or
Yes,
something
please.
above, it does not work or it's not somehow opening. Just want to double
Really?
check.
Okay, let me
If you check
uh
all the way up in this comment
yes,
section,
yes. Uh-huh.
when
Well, it
I
is
try
showing for
to,
me. So let me do this. Let me log out here. Let me log out, sign out. Okay. And let me put the link there. It's working, but I think it's still keeping me
maybe
signed in. So
Can
let
you
me.
repeat the link again? Yeah.
Yes, I will. I'll put that in the chat for you. There you go. You see that?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you able to access it, please?
Yes, it's working now. I just clicked.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Excellent. So at this point, anybody have all great questions? Anybody have any other thoughts on this? I'm curious. Have you folks ever set up a always on availability group using Linux? Anybody on the call? Or just Windows?
Not for me, more on Windows, but that's my future plan to learn more on the Linux side as well. Huh?
Okay, good. Have you ever installed SQL Server on Linux?
Not yet, yeah, but that's the plan for future testing and learning.
Okay. Well, would you be interested if I do a session maybe sometime in the coming weeks?
Definitely.
If I may,
Good to learn
Anil?
professional advice, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I want to keep a track on the time and be respectful for the next speaker. So.
We are good with the time. Just you mentioned Linux, so I will give my 2 cents. First of all, I'm working with SQL Server on Linux for a long time. It actually works better than on Windows regarding performance. Using the same hardware, we are using Ubuntu. You need to make your own test, but and maybe it was a bit changed, but I can tell you that we did a very deep test, and we came to the conclusion that Ubuntu is the best for this. I'm saying this because most of the documentation that you will find at Microsoft is regarding using Red Hat.
Yes.
This is because of the partnership
Pacemaker.
that they have.
Partnership.
But in my test, I want to give the best performance.
Gotcha. Has anybody worked with containers here? No? Okay. See, that's going to be the future where some of these test deployments, and for developers especially, if they need to be given a SQL Server real quick, you can deploy that on a container and they can be up and running in no time. So rather than provisioning VMs and everything and you installing SQL Server, all that takes time, right? So containers are here for the rescue. Again, a lot of it might be an advanced topic, but I really would like to share some info on that in the coming weeks, if I'm asked to be brought back again. So yeah.
We can always schedule another meeting. Even so, we are a bit filled with a session. If I correct,
Feedback.
I think that the next open slot that we have is on April or even 1 month after it. We have great speakers every week and a lot of people that want to join. Regarding container, again, my personal 2 cents. It's great to use containers for small, let's say medium small databases. It's not something that solves a real need when you have big databases or medium plus databases. But I don't need to say what is a big database. So most people see like 10 gigabyte and they say, oh, this is a big, I had a client like this, and I try to explain to him, no, 10 gigabyte is not even small, it's tiny. 10 gigabyte is what Microsoft give you to do with Express Edition for free. So just to put it in a level, a big database, as I see it, it's more than 100 terabyte. We're managing one like this. I would say that less than 10 terabyte, it's let's say medium not more than this. And the reason that I'm saying it mostly to put it into perspective, you need to understand that in theory, SQL Server can use even 500 terabyte with no issue. I don't remember the exact max size, but it's a lot more.
Got it.
So don't try to
Awesome.
use containers on big database or medium database.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not for this. It's
Right.
good for small companies that you want to deploy it fast between different machines, take the container and deploy it to another one.
Thank you, Ronan. I think that's all we have, and we are also out of time. So, yeah. So if it is okay, I can just go ahead and stop recording. And